Why the father must die for the man to be born, for you to become a man, an adult man with an independent mind, the father must die. At least this is what Freud said. But Jung actually took it further and said the death of the father does not have to be physical, does not have to be literal. It could be ideological. So you don't need to actually kill your father. You need to kill an idea of him. That sentence is going to sound very completely insane. It's going to sound weird and absolutely mad. You think is POK mad? For half of you listening to this, especially if you grew up in Nigeria, a place where honor your father isn't just a casual phrase. It is the foundation of the culture. It is the architect of the culture. Yoruba culture, Igbo culture, Hausa culture. It's what all of our culture is built on. The honor your father, honor your parents. In our culture, we constantly confuse fear for respect. We think because a boy trembles, a boy panics, a boy is afraid when the dad drives in with his car, we think he honors his dad, which is a complete no. That is not honor, that is terror. Yes. And terror does not build kings, my brother. Terror builds fear. Terror builds a servant that disguised as a king when the father is not at home. And that's exactly why many Nigerians are docile, because they don't honor their parents, they don't honor their father, they don't honor their mother, they fear them. And when you are afraid, it's another ball game entirely. You are just an obedient person who listens, who takes instruction and executes those instructions, no matter your age. You take those instructions when you are 7 years old. You take them when you are 18. You take them when you are 25. You take them at 30, 35, 40. And then you become an adult that wear pampers. That's who you become, especially in this kind of setting. I'm telling you how dangerous it could be if the idealized father does not die. Stay with me. Men who never kill the idealized image of the father, they don't become adults. They stay sons forever. They become something worse even. They become a 40-year-old that is wearing the father's opinion everywhere in Lagos like an agbada. They become a 40-year-old daughter that wears their mother's opinion around like a rapper. They are most likely like let's call them living room kings. They are only kings when the father is not at home. They are only adults at the absence of their parents. They can't even take any decision without quietly seeking for the validation of the father. They can't decide on who to marry, where to live, the business to get into, without quietly seeking for some sort of validation, some sort of approval from the father. Today, we are going incredibly deep into one of the most argued and contested and misunderstood human psychology, the symbolic death of the father. We are going to unpack what Freud actually said about it, what Carl Jung corrected about it, why a secure father makes this transition a handshake, but a tyrannical and narcissistic father makes this a all-time war. Because the idealized father has to die, regardless of whatever you think. And I'm going to break it down for you. Let's get right in. Let me first tell you the source of this whole symbolic death of the father. It's not something I discovered. It's something that has been in the vogue since. And I actually find it interesting, and I said, I'm going to discuss it on this podcast and try to relate it with our everyday life as a Nigerian, for example. Let's deal with the source first. If you spend any time on motivational side of internet, on the self-help side of the internet, you constantly see the phrase, a man can only become a man when his father dies. You often see that phrase everywhere. And this phrase is often attributed to Sigmund Freud. Yes, Sigmund Freud is a psychologist. This is a modernized paraphrase of what he actually said. And what he actually said is in his book, his 1913 book called Totem and Taboo. In Totem and Taboo, Freud built a radical theory of civilization based on the premium myth, an ancient prehistoric tribe where a dominant, all-powerful father rules the premier earth with absolute authority. The sons were desperate for their own freedom. They were desperate for their own sovereignty. They want to be free from the tyrannical rule of their father. They came together, they bound together, and they killed their father. But afterwards, they were overwhelmed with guilt. They have to institute laws, morality, and taboos to manage their conscience. And in such, they replicate the order that the father once maintained. So clinically, Freud translated this into Oedipus complex, the developmental task where a young boy must resolve his intense rivalry with his father, outgrow the need to replace him, and instead learn to identify with him rather than simply submitting to him. So the kill the father language has always been psychoanalytical. It's a psychological term. So Carl Jung actually took Freud's work further and he blew it open. For Jung, the father is not just a physical rival. Yes, it's not just a physical rival in the household. The father is an archetype. The father is your boss. The father can be the government. It can be the head of your community. It can be the head of that landlord association. The father can be the SUG president in your school. It could be the head of a court, of an organization. So the father is an archetype, basically. He is the psych personification of authority, order, law, tradition, structure, discipline. These are personification of the father, according to Jung. So you understand that when we say father must die, it is not just the physical father that births you. We're talking extensively about a whole lot of archetypes that can represent the father in your life. Mentors are also one of them. So what we mean? So the father archetype is the psychological template your brain uses to relate to every boss you ever work with, every government that will ever led you, everybody you often live under or submit yourself to. It's the same way you view God. So Jung understood the weight of this personally. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflection, Jung knows that 6 weeks after his own father passed away, he had a deeply unsettling dream about him. That dream forced Jung to seriously confront, for the very first time, the massive question of what continues to live on inside a son's psyche after the parent is gone. Jung has to confront himself. My dad is dead. What is now living in me? That's why some people will tell you, my father is dead. But you see, if I see a con, I can't take it because of the flogging, the beating that he gave me in 90 something when I took a con. The father did not die. The fear is still living in their psyche. And that is what we are exploring in this particular episode. So stay with me. So modern Jungian analysts, in our brilliant work on the archetypal parents, warn us that the father archetype carries a beautiful capacity for protection and guidance. But it also carries the terrifying shadow. When that archetype coddles, when that structure that is supposed to nurture you turns into a tool of absolute emotional domination, the archetype becomes tyrannical. And I know many of you can relate to this. When that father that is meant to be the cuddle, that is meant to be the protection, that is meant to be the guiding light, becomes emotionally manipulative, becomes somebody that wants to dominate you, becomes somebody that wants to oppress, it becomes tyrannical. So let's set this record straight and lay the theory honestly. The literal breeding father does not have to die. That's not what the theory is saying. The internalized image of the father as an infallible God, God-like authority, absolutely must die. So the theory is not saying your physical father must die. The theory is saying that idealized father, that fear that is in your head, that God-like authority that your father has in your psyche, he has to absolutely die for the real adult in you, for your independent mind that you own yourself, for it to be able to come to life. That authority that your father has in your psyche has to go. The death is an internal psychological milestone. So even if some men, it causes a fracture between the real world relationship of they and their dad, it is still psychological. It is majorly a psychological battle. Despite the fact that for it to die, sometimes young men have to confront their dad physically for them to actually get freedom from that tyrannical rule. But you have to recognize that the death of the father, it is not physical, it is a psychological battle that you want to win. So when it seems like you are losing physically or you are winning physically, what matters the most is your psyche. Is it gone? Is that God-like authority that he has over you in your side, is it dead? Because if it does not die, the real independent mind that you own yourself will never grow. So why the shell must break? Why should the father die? That is the next question you are asking. And that's what I want to talk about right now. So here is the part our traditional African culture gets incredibly right, but the modern West has completely forgotten. A father is supposed to be a god to a small child. That is it. I'm not going to come here and start pointing out to you that look, fathers are bad or fathers are not needed. That's not what I'm saying. You have to understand that fathers are a must in a small child life. What we are trying to point out is that they are going to get to a point that the father has to go back, that the father must withdraw, so that the independent mind of you as an adult man will grow up and we'll get to that point. I will explain exactly when that should happen and how that could happen on a peaceful note. So what we mean, when you are 4 years old and your father tells you, do not touch that hot stove, you do not need this philosophical debate. You don't need him to present logical thesis for you to obey that. You need absolute authority, because you as a child, you will definitely just die and kill yourself without the guidance of the father. So developmental psychology completely backs this up. A child early moral, cognitive and behavioral foundation is built absolutely entirely on treating parental authority as a near absolute law. Yeah, that is exactly how we can build up our cognitive and behavioral foundation on the right way. And that's why the Bible said, teach your child the way of the law, the way he should go, so that when he grows old, he won't depart from it. Because when you are small, that is when you are building your cognitive, your behavioral foundation, your morals. That's when you are building it. And for you to build it, you need to believe that the authority coming from your parents is an absolute law. There are no debates. They give you instruction, follow it. It is needed. Jean Piaget, the legendary pioneer of child development, has proved this in his foundational work on moral development. He showed that young children genuinely experience parental rule as fixed, cosmic, universal law. They are not opinions. The children, they don't see whatever their parents is saying as opinions. They are absolute. They are fact. So that is when a kid, when a kid hear his parents say Jesus is God, they trust it immediately. Majority of kids that are Christian get to understand Christianity more when they grow up as an adult. So that is a fact. Parents are needed, and the godlike authority they have is also very important when kids are small. But here is the catch. Here's where the problems start coming in. A psychological structure that keeps you safe at age 6, it will completely imprison you at age 26. Yeah. Because at age 26, you are no longer that 4-year-old that needs to be instructed. You are no longer that 4-year-old that does not know the difference between a hot stove and a cold ice block. That's not who you are anymore. And that is what the father must recognize. And if the father does not recognize that, that's exactly when the problem will start. In psychology, this messy, painful transition is called separation individuation. That's what it's called. The term traces back to psychoanalyst Margaret Malas. She had a groundbreaking work on early childhood, but modern psychologists have extended it right into adolescence and adulthood. Decades of empirical peer-reviewed data tell us the exact same thing. To become a fully functioning, psychologically sound adult, you must achieve a measurable psychological separation from your parental authority. It has to happen. This is a research-backed, peer-reviewed work. To become a fully functioning, psychologically sound adult, you must achieve a measurable psychological separation from parental authority. Science-backed, research-backed statement. You have to stop outsourcing your moral and practical judgment to your parents. You have to stop outsourcing your moral and practical judgment to your boss. Your moral and practical judgment to the archetypal father. And you start owning your own spine. And the data on what happens when this separation is blocked is what I'm discussing today. Because the father, in quotes, if he's not a secure father, if it is a tyrannical father, does not willingly let go of that control. Because the growth and independence of the child is not as important as the control that the tyrannical father has over the child. And we're going there. Let's look at a definitive 2012 study that was published in the Journal of Adolescence by researchers Keynes, Sones, and Bayers. They studied 232 imagined adults and their parents to see exactly how parental dynamics affect this leap into manhood that we're talking about. Of course, their findings were stark, like very, very stark. A psychologically controlling parent climate completely derails a young adult's ability to achieve separation individuation. It derails it. The researchers define psychological control very specifically. And how did they define it? It characterizes parents who are completely non-responsive to their child's unique psychological need. And instead, they use high manipulating tactics like guilt induction, shaming, and love withdrawal to force the child to meet their arbitrary needs. I don't think I need to say much. Majority of you that will be listening to this or watching this will most likely have experienced any of these manipulative tactics. At least you will have experienced love withdrawal from the tyrannical father, from the tyrannical boss, from the tyrannical authority you are trying to pull away from. You are trying to get your own freedom off that relationship. The first thing they do is what? Love withdrawal. Because they know that you would like to cling to that love. And that's why this old term that raised on the internet, were you not loved at home? I want you to sit with that clinical list for a second. Guilt induction, shaming, and love withdrawal. If you grow up under a tyrannical authoritarian father, you must have experienced these things. You know what I'm talking about already. Love withdrawal, shaming, Guilt tripping. Which one have you not experienced? Just because you want to break away. We're going to get there. So, what does Keynes, Sones, and Bayer study? They found something even sharper. Aside the manipulative tactics that the tyrannical father will use. When a father uses these manipulative tactics, he doesn't just slow down the maturity of the child that is trying to achieve his own independent mind. It doesn't just slow that down. It distorts your manhood into two deeply dysfunctional shape. Two dysfunctional shape. That is what you're gonna achieve, especially when this manipulative tactics has been used on you. Number one, the dependent boy. A son who stays totally dependent well into his 30s. He stays totally dependent on the father's instruction. He stays totally dependent on the father's advice. He stays totally dependent on the father's opinion on everything of his life. Well into his 30s, he's done. He's a dependent boy. He still needs permission for everything. He still flinches at the slightest hint of his father. He still behave like that 6-year-old that rush into the room to clean off his feet that he's using to play football at the on of the father. Well into his 30s, he should not be having that kind of thing. Well into his 30s, he should understand his father, not fear. That is not how it's going to work. If he still fear his father at that age, he's a dependent boy. He's a dependent boy. What is the second type of archetype that they discover? The counter-dependent rebel. Yes, a son who rips away in a flash of angry, false independence. He causes contact, he shouts, he performs, it's very aggressive, it becomes very aggressive. Yes, but it is a fake autonomy. He cuts off everybody, he does not want to listen to anybody. But it is a fake autonomy. It is not real autonomy. Because he hasn't actually built that internal identity. He has not actually achieved that psychological freedom that we're talking about. That's why I said at the beginning that the death of the father, it is not physical. Despite the fact that you are going to have different type of combat. It is not physical. It is a psychological battle. So he's still controlled by the father. This counter-dependent rebel is still controlled by the father. It's just in reverse. Because his whole life is just reacting to everything that his father does. So when you stand and scream at the father, and you scream at the boss, and you think, oh, that's it. Because I can now scream at them, because I can now shout back at them, I'm free. That's not how it works. Because if every of your action is a reaction than what it does, you are still in trap. You are still being controlled. This time around, not directly. This time around, he does it whenever he needs a reaction from you. He knows what to do. He knows what to do. There are many times you don't want to send money. He knows what to say that will make you send the money angrily. The goal is send money. You've still done it, even if you are angry. He wants you to do this. He doesn't want you to get married to this particular lady. You angrily don't. The goal is either you're angry or not. The goal has been achieved. Neither of these that they found out is true manhood. That's not the true manhood. Neither of the dependent boy or the counter rebel. It's not the true manhood. Real independence of the mind is calm. Very calm. He has nothing to prove to the father anymore. That is exactly when independence is showing up. He doesn't need to shout, and he doesn't need to announce itself to anybody. He's just calm. He realizes who he is now. He realizes his own identity. He embraces it, and he moves on with life. He has nothing to correct with the father. He has nothing to prove to the father. He has nothing to show to the father. There's another data here, a longitudinal data that we can talk about. It's a massive 5-wave study was tracking adolescents from age 12 all the way to their 20s. And they found a beautiful natural woman pattern. And what did they find? From age 12 to 16, adolescents naturally pull away from parental authority. You often start observing that when you become a teen, That's when you say, I don't want to go to church today. It is natural for you to start pulling away at your teenage years. And conflict peaks at that age. That's when the father also wants to enforce his authority. But from ages 16 to 20, as a young adult establishes genuine independence, the relationship actually improves and the conflict between the father and the adult drops. Only when the father is secure. And what I'm trying to explain to you is that the fight is supposed to resolve. The combat between the adult and the father is meant to settle. It's not meant to be a prolonged thing. The conflict is meant to happen regardless of anything, because the father wants to actually know if you are truly independent and he wants to enforce his rule. So conflict is meant to be temporary developmental phase. Yeah, it's meant to be a very, very temporary developmental phase, not a permanent one, not an exhausting fight that goes on for life. So if you are 35 years old and you are still fighting your father, you are still fighting the boss, you are still fighting people, and you still think you still have anything to prove to people, that maturity is not yet there. Something is still broken. Before I go on, I want everyone listening to this to do something. Run a diagnosis test on your own life right now. Think about the last 3 major decisions you made. Your career path, the person you are dating, the person you are getting married to, how you are going to invest your money, how you are going to spend your money. Even the way you speak, the way you relate with people, the way you invest, the type of friends you make, the type of people you hate. Think about it. Now ask yourself this question. Did you make those choices because they align with you? Do you make those choices because they are your internal truth? Do you make those choices because they align with your independent identity? Or is it because daddy said? You know the answer. Let the answer sit with you. If the answer is because daddy said, of course you know you have a problem, because you are still a dependent boy. There are two kinds of father generally. Two kinds of father. And the first one is a secure father. The second one is a tyrannical father. Biblically, a psychologically secure father watches his son grow in strength, competence, and intellect. He smiles once he sees that. He understands that this is the assignment. He knows that his job is to put himself out of job. Yeah, the job of the father is to train you to become competent. Is to train you to become a standalone adult. He knows that his job, once his job, if he does his job very well, it's meant to go out of job. It's meant to stop controlling, stop instructing. It's meant to go from that person that gives advice every day and instructs to a mere consultant that we call to consult once in a while. So once he discovers that this person has grown, the secure father, what does he do? He intentionally adjusts his role. He stops being the absolute commander and starts being a wise consultant. So when the son disagrees with him, the secure father does not treat this as a treason. He does not treat this as a spiritual cause. He does not treat this as a big problem. He welcomes this as a proof that he has raised a man that has the mind of his own. In Jungian terms, the father survives his own archetype. He doesn't need to be worshipped as an infallible God, because his self-worth is never built on keeping his children small. His self-worth is never built on being bigger than his children. His self-worth is built on the fact that, hey, look at the competent man I raised. He knows that his job is to train somebody such that he will be out of job. He will be out of the job of training that person. But let's talk about the second type of father, the tyrannical father. This is a heavy conversation. This is something that I know many people is going to disagree with me on. But I'm going to say it anyway. Yes, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A tyrannical, narcissistic father, he reads his son's growth as a direct threat to his throne. Yes, A tyrannical father reads his son's competence as a threat to his control. He reads his son's financial literacy as a threat to the fact that the son will no longer come for that advice. He reads his son's marriage as a threat to his control. So when the son starts to see the father's flaw, the father has flaw, it's not infallible. When the son starts seeing the woman's flaw, the father does not meet that moment with humility. He does not start to understand that this is not a grown man that most likely know 98% of things that I know. This is not a grown man that I can no longer instruct. This is not a man that I need to dialogue with when I want something. This is not a man that I need to speak to as an adult, not as a 6-year-old child that I used to instruct them. So, more control, more screaming, more weaponization of guilt, more withdrawal of love is exactly what a tyrannical father will push towards the child, especially when he's becoming a man of his own. So this is the exact psychological control and the pattern that the clinical research warns us about. That is exactly what they discover. And I need to actually clear this. Tyrannical father is not a disciplined father. Don't get it wrong. My daddy always asks us to wake up by 5 a.m. That's not a tyrannical father. My daddy always pushes us to work hard. That's not a tyrannical father. My daddy always pushes us to respect elders. That's not a tyrannical father. No. Strictness, discipline, firm boundaries, they are just discipline. Psychological control has its own identity. Don't mix it together. That being said, let's bring it home now. Let's bring it to scriptures, because our people love to weaponize the Bible a lot. Yes. When the father has tried to withdraw love and guilt trip you and it doesn't work, you run to the Bible to look for another source of control. So let's touch on that. Proverbs 19:26 says, "He who ruins his father and drives away his mother is a son who brings shame and disgrace." Yes. The Bible is deeply clear about radical honor, but biblical wisdom holds two powerful truths at the exact same time. It commands honor, but it absolutely demands a departure. Look at the Genesis mandate, Genesis 2:24. Explicitly states that, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife." He's leaving. The Bible is clear about the departure of the man. And why is this? To me, the departure has to happen because the man, they said, is the head of the home. How can the man head another home if he does not psychologically defeat the father from his head? If the father still controls him psychologically, that means the other father that still controls him is the one controlling the new home, which negates the mandate of God. God said the man is the head of his home. So if the father does not die psychologically, if the father still controls him psychologically, that means he cannot effectively lead that new home. Yes, the Bible has said it. Honor your father and your mother so that your day will be long. But it is very clear about departure as well. The God-first structural blueprint for manhood requires departure. You cannot live and build your own kingdom until you have functionally left the jurisdiction and kingdom of the old one. If you are still mentally subservient to your father's every whim, every instruction, everything he says, you are violating the divine order of maturity. You are trying to build your own house inside another man's parlor. That's exactly what you are going to do. Honor never meant blind obedience forever. A man who remains an obedient, terrified boy his entire life because he's honoring his father is fundamentally failing the only assignment of fatherhood, which was actually meant to build a man up. A man who remains an obedient, terrified boy his entire life is not honoring his father. He is fundamentally failing the only assignment fatherhood is meant to actually accomplish. When a father has built his entire sense of manhood on being absolutely obeyed, when he has built his entire fatherhood on being absolutely say yes to, yes daddy, to everything that comes out of his mouth, he lacks the psychological framework to handle a son who has outgrown obedience. Without that framework, any sign of independent growth risks direct disrespect to him because he doesn't understand it. It is out of his framework. He owns a horde of people that say yes and yes to everything he says. So disobedience or having another opinion is a foreign concept and it screams disrespect. A man that has everly known power, a man that has always hold power over his household via absolute dominance, via absolute obedience, he will never want to leave it voluntarily. You know that, of course. When everybody answers yes, 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 okay, 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 Father Lord, we honor you. Whatever you say is the final. How do you think this person wants to relinquish power voluntarily? It will be defended at all costs. That particular control that he has built his identity around will be defended. Understanding this is not you excusing his behavior because you're understanding. No. It's about realizing that his control tactics are a reflection of his own personal unresolved trauma and fear. It is not about your inadequacy. It's not about your disrespect. It's not about the way you speak. It's not because of the way you move. It's about his own personal unresolved trauma. So when you realize that, you can fight the toxic pattern without destroying your soul by hating him, by hating the government, by hating anybody that is the symbol of father and authority that you are trying to break away from. This is exactly what Nietzsche meant when he spoke about the absolute necessity of becoming who you are. It is not a license for childish rebellion or wild degeneracy. It is terrifying, sober demand that you stop living a mere extension of someone else's unexamined values. Because that's what you do when you are a dependent boy. You are just an extension of that father. You are not who you are yet. And to start authoring your own standard of reality, your own principles, your own way of life. Even if that process makes every single person around you uncomfortable, it doesn't matter. The idealized father must die for you to become who you are. So what does this symbolic killing actually look like in everyday practice? It is not a dramatic, toxic blowout. It is not an angry WhatsApp message. That's not what it is. It's a real psychological execution. It happens in your psyche. Like I said, it is not physical at all. It's something that happens in your psyche. You execute it quietly. You execute it with emotional discipline. So the first thing you need to do is you need to spot the pattern. What is the pattern that the father used? What is the main goal of the father? Is it control? What are the aim? What are the things he wants? What are the things he does? You need to spot all of the pattern. Then you start building your own internal authority. You must establish your own clear standard for what good is, what moral is, what competent looks like. Every decision you are going to make. Then you have to decide for yourself when to say yes, when to say no. Then you have to be ready to face the consequence. When you go start a business and it fail, and you still want to run to the father, then the father has the right to decide if you start a business or not. That's what it is. You cannot want to run to the father as a backup and you don't want to carry the father along. You are not ready yet. You have to be ready for total and absolute cutoff and be ready for the consequence. But here is the absolute and brilliant twist that many people don't talk about. It is the exact truth I want you to carry in your spirit today. The symbolic death of the father is not the final destination. It is just a mere passage. There's a quiet and much deeper psychological reality that the father archetype isn't meant to die and stay buried in the grave of resentment. That's why I said it's not physical, it's something that's happening psychological. The father can actually resurrect as a regular human being. He can resurrect as a normal consultant. He can resurrect as somebody, an entire new adult that you relate to on a good term. It doesn't have to be resentment and hatred and fight. That's why I said it is psychological. Once you stop desperately needing the father to be perfect, once you stop begging for his permission, once you stop begging for his approval, a miraculous shift starts happening in your mind. You look at him for the first time in your life and you actually see him clearly as a man with flaws. You see a flawed, tired, a limited man who was most likely doing his absolute best with a broken tool, with lesser information, with lesser education than you, and he's making a mistake. That's what you begin to see. When you do this internal work that I'm talking about, when you slay the idol, when you kill the idealized godlike authority, the deep anger that you feel, the resentment that you feel, it all melts away. The burning resentment vanishes. And for those where a rational relationship can still be built, the relationship will spring up. The authentic friendship between the son and the father will be genuine again. It stopped becoming a master to slave relationship. You stop becoming a god to a creation relationship. You stop becoming a king to slave relationship. You stop trembling when he speaks. You stop hiding when he comes in. Stop seeking the validation. It becomes a relationship between two grown men standing on a level ground with equal understanding of each other to thrive and push the family name forward with the best of their ability. Now, to be completely honest with you, that beautiful relationship doesn't happen in every family. Yes, you will only find a few family where the separation individuation of the son would happen on a peaceful note, or where the separation individuation of the son will happen and there will be a reconciliation with the father. It happens it happens rarely. So for every family, it's going to be unique and it's going to be dynamic. The problem is that you should understand that the goal is not to resent the father. The goal is not to hate the father. The goal is to achieve separation individuation. The goal is to achieve an independent mind of your own. The goal is for you to become an independent adult yourself. Some narcissistic parents will choose to take their pride to the grave. Some narcissistic father would rather take that pride to the grave. They would rather than accept a son that has outgrown their control. They would rather die than accept that you are now a standalone individual. That is a real and yet a tragic, agonizing reality. And I'm not going to sit here and give you some cheap, toxic positivity. But I'm going to tell you, in the real world relationship, some relationship cannot be saved. In reality, some relationship is going to be there. It's going to be dead forever. And that is the pain that some people, that is the pain that some men have to go through to achieve independence of themselves, to become an adult. That is why what Freud said earlier can actually happen literally sometimes. While most of it is psychological, sometimes you don't get to rebuild that relationship with the father. The ultimate goal of this psychological warfare is never to defeat your father. It was to stop being ruled by a ghost version of him. You could finally step out of his shadow and meet your own world. You meet the world on your own 2 feet. You stop being ruled even when he's not there. Currently, he rules over every of your decision. You seek his permission, seek his validation for every move you are making. The goal is to cut this off and attain self-independence. So if you are listening to this right now and you are 25, 30 or 35-year-old man, your chest tightens and your stomach stiffens anytime that it coughs, you flinch anytime he shows up, at the sound of his horn, you run under the duvet. That is the data. That's a data telling you that you are still in bondage. You are still that dependent boy. You have not yet become a full-fledged man that God intended to be. You have not become a full-fledged man that could lead another home. You are a stooge. You are a puppet. You do not have to be cruel or malicious or disrespectful to bury the idealized father. You don't have to be brutal. You don't have to insult him every now and then because you are trying to cut off the idealized father. It doesn't work that way. All you need to do is stop seeking his permission, stop seeking his approval, make decisions, stay by those decisions, and embrace the consequences of those decisions. That is it on this episode. I'll need you to do something for me though. I need you to share this video with one brother that needs to hear this message. I also need you to tell me in the comment section, how have you been able to deal with the tyrannical father, with the tyrannical authority, that tyrannical boss that you have dealt with? How have you been able to deal with the secure father, with that secure boss as well? Let me know in the comment section. See you on the next one.